Hi, everybody. We're so professional on this stage. I don't know how you handle it, frankly. All right. So I have to tell you, this panel is one of the things that I'm most excited about today, because every time we do an AlmaLinux Day, I try to tailor it toward whatever whatever that community might want to hear or might want to see. And if we're doing VFX stuff, the obvious thing is to have some folks from the VFX industry involved, right? Tristan, being our host for the day, gets to pretend like he's not been on stage all day, even though he has. Yeah. So we'll go through some introductions, and then I have some fun questions that I even wrote down here so that I'm not reading them off my phone. Well done, me. I'm excited. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they're going to do a better job of it than I will. So we'll start with Tristan, and we'll go down the line.
All right. My name is Tristan Theroux. I'm the IT Infrastructure and Security Director for SHED in Montreal.
Hi, my name is Laurence Cymet. I'm the head of technology at VFX Studio in Toronto. I am also the chair of VES Toronto Visual Effects Society. It's an honorary society recognizing visual effects work. And I teach at a college in Toronto called Centennial College.
Hi guys, my name is Stephen Winters, and I am the director of IT over at Cinesite for the North America.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. There's one question that I'm going to ask you that's not on here so that we get a little bit of context, and we're going to go in reverse order this time. What made you, why was it appropriate to have you at AlmaLinux Day?
I'm going to refer back to something you've said not only in today's topic earlier, but something is that, when it comes to open source, it's a lot of times in our community, it's always about take. We take, and if we don't give back, we're really not kind of helping and bring everything better. So I know, and many times both Tristan and Benny have always reached out and asked, at least for us, for Cinesite Group, ways that we can help. And I think, as Benny said, from the marketing standpoint, we can do that. We may not be the developers. We have developers, but I'm not a developer. But in certain ways, any way possible that we can to advocate how awesome AlmaLinux is going to be great. So,
sweet.
Yeah, I think VFX Studio is a relatively young studio. We just hit 5 years. We're small, thank you. We're about 100 people, but we kind of set from the beginning, okay, we're going to try and do this in a future-facing way, like kind of try to be as modern as possible and try to do the right thing. And so that's what got us really interested. I had some conversations with Tristan about Alma, and we started thinking that, okay, this seems like, for various reasons, a really good direction to explore.
Awesome.
I've been a preacher of Alma since day one, so I don't know. Like, I was called the preacher of AlmaLinux for VFX last year. I don't know what else to tell you, but that's what it's been called.
Tristan's here because I told him to be.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Tristan, to give a little bit of an answer, what do you do at your day job?
I'm a sysadmin, network admin, janitor. I mean, pretty much. And look at it, I'll do it.
Awesome.
I'm a jack of all trades. So,
awesome.
Yeah. And I try to help out as much as I can in the community of AlmaLinux and others. But yeah, whenever I have a minute.
Yeah, and sometimes when you don't.
Yeah.
So for context, the thing that we really wanted to focus on for this panel is the way that the life cycle of Linux and the release cycles of Linux and everything around Linux impacts the VFX world. So the first question I want to ask you guys, we'll start in the middle this time. How do you manage OS releases, specifically your Linux deployment releases?
So it's a tricky question because we try to do that as little as possible, ultimately. The VFX is really problematic because on a given artist machine, you have many different things that all need to work together in the same environment. They have apps running side by side. Even though I tell them, no, you can't run 3 Mayas and 4 nukes all at the same time, they're still going to do that. And that's cool. So we really need a tight ship. We need a scenario where everything's been vetted and tested. And so what we tend to do is lock down pretty hard on the OS in particular. And it really, what's gauging that is the range of application versions that we want to use in the pipeline. So what do they support? What do they don't support? What do they work together? Which packages are conflicting? Which dependencies work together or not? And then, we are going to roll out patches, right? Security fixes. Maybe we want to upgrade to a newer version of Houdini, and that needs a newer NVIDIA driver, and that causes a whole bunch of other problems. Generally, when we do that, we'll sequester some machines, test heavily, test in production, and then we need to find this magical thing called downtime to roll the whole studio out.
What's that again?
I'm
just curious.
So
It's that thing you create when you need it.
We break things, and
Yes.
then there is downtime.
Oh,
so
there
we
you
can't
go.
roll things
Exactly.
out.
exactly.
That's what we do, right?
We've started calling it yellowing it now because there's no downtime. So
Yeah.
so that's how we approach it.
I like it. Stephen.
Point releases, major versions, it depends.
Yeah.
So I'll go a little bit on this, and I've got some of my guys out here, so they're probably chuckling as I talk about this. But we do quarterly patches, just in general, or unless there's a major security vulnerability that needs to go out immediately. So that's kind of first and foremost. Anything that's a major release takes a little bit more time, but everything that is done in a quarterly patch, typically we'll have about 6 weeks of testing with our groups before we actually do a final release. And it's a combination of our IT folks, our devs, pipeline group, and then some of our artists itself. We do have some packages that we would say are no-nos, or that we're very, very cautious about. NVIDIA is one, I think, like you were just saying. Just the things that are going to be most problematic, we're very cautious on doing those changes, and making testing will sometimes take a little longer to go through, and it has to be a reason why we would want to do it. So whether it's a security or it's a software upgrade, things of that nature. So mixed bag, so depending on, pick your
that
flavor.
makes-
What
that makes
do you need to do?
sense. Like you have to adjust to fit both the urgency and the actual need, right? Yeah, Tristan, how do you do it? Go ahead.
About
actually.
the same as them. The only thing we do is we're always a major release cycle behind. Or if,
Major or minor?
yeah, minor, sorry. So let's say 9.6 released, we're at 9.5. The reason is it takes about 6 months until repos like RPM Fusion or others sync. And that means that we need them for, sadly, FMmpeg and other things like that. So we can't upgrade at that point. So we need to wait 6 months plus. And at that time, we need to roll in dev like them, test it out for 6+ weeks to make sure Houdini is not broken, Edwin's not broken, and all that. And then we can, again, go in production slowly and go full on. We sadly do not have their IT teams, but we're making it work.
You're the IT team.
Exactly. Plus the dev. So, at least I have an amazing pipeline
That's
dev,
perfect.
which helped me out, but yeah.
Yeah. All three of you touched on NVIDIA. How do you handle your NVIDIA deployments right now? Who wants to go first?
I'll go because it's really simple for us. We currently use the .run file because the last time we tested the NVIDIA RPM way broke everything.
Yes.
It broke everything. Like, yeah, it works on paper. It does not work in production. Like, it works in one release, and you update to the next release with the KMS, and it's broken. And then you're just like, okay, let's go back. Oh no, you cannot go back. So yeah, we're using the .run for now. We're gonna test out the new solution from Neil and Jonathan when we're back. But so far, that's what we're doing.
I think for us, it's a similar approach to what we said about the repo. Very carefully, and there's kind of phases of testing. Like I'm usually user 0, and I'm really looking for the smoke tests. Like, does Houdini come up? Can I make a sphere? That kind of thing. And then we move on. We tend to have a beta phase where we'll get, if we feel confident, like the IT team feels confident, pipeline team feels confident, we'll say, okay, let's get just the leads. Like we have kind of a smaller team of leads using that beta in production so we can verify it. And they've kind of gotten used to me saying, hey, I need you to maybe not make your deliveries today, but it's going to help the company. And they've kind of, like, they've accepted that, and they're starting to realize the value in that, and it's worked out. So.
Yeah, I think there's if you had to say a package that's going to get you burned in our industry, it's NVIDIA.
Yeah.
I mean, case in point, we could talk a little bit about ours. We could do all the testing in the world. We did a testing on a release recently for NVIDIA, and it still, once it got released to the greater public, things started breaking, and we had to revert back. So all the testing in the world that we could do with every developer, every IT, every even artist, still won't catch everything. And
Right.
so, it's the one package that when we see it, we're very hesitant now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bummer because I know how impactful it is and how much you guys rely on it. It sucks that has to be treated so carefully. I would love for it to be a little bit more stable. You're absolutely, you can pontificate all you want.
I would, okay, so the three of us were conversing before this topic earlier, just for context, everyone. No, I think I think the challenge we run into is one of the things in our industry we have to be very careful of is that not always those DCC packages are compliant with AlmaLinux or other types of OSs. And so for us, sometimes we're having to add an extra layer of caution on our testing. So one of the things that we would advocate a lot of times is just, more exposure with our relationships with our clients and our software providers or our vendors, because having those and advocating for the OSs that we choose to use and want to use and support will ultimately give us that, that support and more reliability into, patch management. So.
100% agree. Like, the software vendors have very limited support.
Yeah.
And they want to help, but there may come a point where they're going to go, oh, it's an OS problem? We're out.
Yeah,
We're not going to help you.
Yeah.
And we got to figure it out ourselves. Yep. And, oftentimes we do figure it out ourselves.
Yep.
But we have to account for that challenge and that risk.
Yep.
Yeah.
So shifting a bit I know especially the VFX industry right now has been impacted by a number of price increases in their software. Everyone chuckled. That was incredible. It's a common problem across industries, but definitely the VFX industry has been getting hit right now. If we talk about greater open source beyond just your OS, with all of these price increases, at what point do you start to think about shifting other software to open source options? Steven, you go. He's like, wait, not me.
No. It's a great question. We're a big provider of open source. One of the things to talk about, we actually support and created an open source project called Gaffer, which is a lighting package that some studios use as their lighting package for delivering movies. And so, from our perspective, we're always going to be a big supporter of open source and continue to look at that. I think in the history of visual effects and animation, and even for Cinesite itself, we're always constantly looking at opportunities for open source that could help improve our overall business needs. The ways you would need to weigh that is the technical debt that you have associated over the years and the amount of shift and lift you have to do to change that. That's one thing. Things that you look at and explore would be the support of the community of that open source project. And what the things I'm seeing is we are seeing an explosion of support throughout the community in open source. And so I think there is avenues and ways in which we can see that being feasible, beyond what we currently do, But I think everything becomes an evaluation of risk and reward and in that regard. So.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's that trade-off
Yeah.
of sometimes when there's a really crucial part of your pipeline and it's a really big thing that people rely on, it needs to work to function, you kind of want someone to blame, and you want to even pay to have that opportunity, because even there could be legal or insurance matters,
Yeah.
or like if you don't deliver your project.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the help you need. And so it really depends on the component or the project or what it is and how much support that community has. So when we're looking at open source, it's really like, how active is the community? And I'll give a perfect, to me, one of the most perfect open source examples in VFX is OpenColor.io, or OCIO.
Yep.
So this is a color management system, and it solves a problem that none of the individual vendors solved, is that we need color to look the same in every application and everywhere we do things in the pipeline, because it has to look the same. And so no one was really solving that. And I think it was Jeremy Seelan at Sony who stepped up. And he was doing this, and everybody picked it up, and it was perfect because it filled that gap. But then at one point, he said, guys, I can't maintain this anymore. And this is where the Academy Software Foundation came in to pick it up and built this big community to maintain it. But to me, it was just such a perfect case for open source, because it's not something an individual vendor would do, because it is catered at making an ecosystem work together.
One thing to just to add, though, with all that, and I think, both Laurence and myself, we've worked at a studio that, even 5 years, that's a long time, and a lot of pipeline development has been done. And I think the one thing I can say to anyone that is starting out with a new studio or another studio, the one thing about our industry is you can pretty much find an application that's open source to solve your studio needs. And I think that's the interesting thing, is that we've seen over the years developers come in and say, I can solve a problem that fits visual effects and animation. And if you go with open source days, we have reviews, we see open source applications for 3D, we see open source applications for lighting, reviews, all that aspect. And so I think we're coming to a place now where newer studios have more of an advantage because of the technical debt that doesn't exist at that point, right? And they're starting from scratch.
100%. If I was starting a new studio now, I would probably look at something like Aeon as a platform for publishing in the studio and managing data in the studio, because it's matured and it really got a lot of investment, and there's a big community behind it, and the support is amazing. But 5 years ago, it wasn't like that, so we kind of had to build our own, and now it's much harder to get away from that.
Yeah, that's the point, yeah. On our high end, it's a trade-off again. You want the enterprise support or a huge back-end community to back it off and help you out when you have a problem, something like that. But at the same time, well, for a small studio, because we're smaller than you guys, it's becoming an issue, the pricing. And it's the same for you guys, just, it's bigger. And we're starting to look at options. But the sad part is, yes, there's some that are okay, that could be done, but the migration from what we currently pay to that open source tool is actually more pricier than staying. And that's not a good enough trade-off.
Is there, I'm going to throw a curveball, is there an opportunity there for helping, for open source projects to help with migrations or help smooth the transition for you? And how realistic is it, do you think, for those projects to be able to help in that way?
On my point of view, it's possible, but they would need way more help to achieve that. Yeah. Just people to jump in and help them out to build things, like Elevate for migrating between OS. Yeah. Same thing for the software. They'll just be able to provide better documentation, training, and things like that. There's some software that can be done it, but most of them are not there yet.
I think it depends on the product that you're wanting to change, because one of the things that comes to mind when any major uphaul of a pipeline change, you're thinking about your productions, and you have some productions that are at the very end, some are at the middle, some are just beginning, and so a lot of the times you're focusing on your productions that are just starting, that have the time and the cycles to try a new product, and give you enough time to pivot and back off if it's not going to work. A major product, I could see a world where it depends on how much code has been put into it, where you had something that, you know, is a paid software, but you have so much legacy code on top of code on top of code on top of code that, you know, just unweaving it to get it to do exactly what your productions or your artists are used to doing, that's a cost, and that it's a cost in salary and stuff. And so those are the ways, you know, the things that we're having to weigh.
Yeah, I think, you know, the costs that we're complaining about, we're talking about products that have millions of lines of code, super mature code bases that go back 30 years. Now, I say mature as a positive thing. There's probably also a lot of technical debt there. But you know, it's a really big shoe to fill. But I think there's a kind of a better approach is, you know, like just, there's still so many problems out there. And just focusing on solving those problems is where those opportunities exist, and where I see a lot of you know, open source projects be very successful, like OpenColor.io or OpenEXR, or, you know, it's just people said, hey, this is a huge gap, we can do this, and it kind of worked for open source in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. Laurence, I think you said that, and you actually kind of ended on it too, the moment that you consider open source isn't just like a cost savings or you know, we have a new problem that needs to be solved, but it's also like across industry. And these are not questions that they were prepped for, so this is going to be fun. So where do you see the opportunity for open source right now? Like, what are the problems that we could, as a community, as an open source community, help with that would help across the industry, not just, or like across the platform, not just for any specific thing? Where do you see us needing to fix?
That's a huge thing. I'll just point something out. I think I've been on the vendor side and worked with many different industries, and I feel like VFX is probably the most problematic industry out there. I really struggle to find a more, simply because the output is so big, and the compute is so high, and the requirements are so huge, and the expectations are so high. It's just it's a messy space. But I think what comes to mind is and obviously there's a lot of issues around this, but generative AI, I think, will have some kind of place in VFX, and I think that's a wide open field, blue sky, and Comfy UI is a pretty insane example of open source software. You've got like thousands of people building this community, but it really came from a different place than VFX. I think whatever it is, it really has to be catered to that industry.
I'm going to go a different way.
Please.
I mean, when you asked the question, I was pondering on a lot of the open source tools that are in our community in the visual effects and animation side that we use today, and just thinking things that are going to be talked about, tomorrow on Monday. They talk about, with review tools. You have a bunch of open source reviewing tools. You have queuing or render farm systems. You have a bunch of open source render farm systems. And the thing that's different, or I think is not different in a bad way, but a positive way, is kind of what you were alluding to in your talk, is that the way one studio wrangles their jobs is very specific to the render wrangling management system they choose. Mm-hmm. Each open source render wrangling system is very different for that reason. Same thing with reviews. The way a studio may want to review their content or bring in media and out is going to be very different. And while they're similar, but there's little nuances that make people want to pick one over the other. And that's the flexibility and beauty of open source.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
And I'll just second that. I would say there's a huge problem in that most VFX studios receive content from someone else, a post facility. And there is zero, I mean, there are standards that exist, but there is zero consistency in that. And we have had to tool an incredible amount of automation to try and deal with the fact that everything we get in, we have a consistent pipeline. So all our data has to be converted into that pipeline. But what comes in is who knows what.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I can
Every
add more to
show, every show is. I remember the days. I'm getting back to my old days. Every show was a different tool to ingest something. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're still dealing with it. I mean, we have a post shop in a house, but that's not the issue. It's the raw footage that just comes in. What flavor you want at this time? What camera came going with it? And just like, okay, let's figure it out. Let's convert it for the 10 times, you know? But yeah, I can add more than what they
No,
said,
that's
honestly.
okay. That's okay. I should try to force you to, but I won't. I know how much sleep you had. So if we come back to Linux specifically, you've talked about how you manage release cycles. We've talked about like specific packages that might cause you hesitation. Beyond those two, what are your biggest pain points with Linux and with you know, all of the ways that you use Linux? What are the biggest pain points that you have?
I'll start on this one. I have currently 2 major pain points if I exclude NVIDIA. I'm not
Yeah,
going
that's
down
what I
the
asked you
rabbit
to
hole
do.
again.
We do give them a bad rap, but we do love them.
We
just
do.
wanna make sure.
It's a love-hate relationship. Like, it's fine.
You love them, which is why you're mad at them.
Yeah, exactly. We love them so much that we hate them. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me right now is locking down the subversion. The minor version, to lock them down, there's not an easy way of doing it. If we go
Okay.
back to patching to that, it's not an easy job right now. There's nothing out of the box that just says, here, I just don't want any OS to get to 9.6. You need to manually repoint repos or weird things that I did to make it happen. And that would be amazing. And I spoke with the Alma community, and everyone's like, yeah, we need to make this happen. But then the checklist is so long that it gets bumped down. The next on my list is the GUI itself. We are on GDM, which does not support HDR. And you want to have always the same user space, configuration, so the user does not get lost every time. And every time you get a consultant but it's different from that studio. Yeah, but we're not that studio. We don't have all the same interface. And I know there's a small community working on that to make it like a universal VFX, flavor of the desktop. But that would be our dream, honestly, to just standardize that all the way around. Even if it's a bit different here and there, I think that would be amazing for us. So.
I'll go next if you want me to. I have one that and maybe those in the audience run the same thing. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's not a bad thing because I think, as Laurence was saying, not every software company or service provider can support every OS in the world. And we acknowledge that, and we know that. But in order to make sure that we are getting the necessary support, we sometimes have to build another OS that they are compatible with to confirm. So when we're running into issues where something is broken, something's not working right, there's a bug, clearly there's a bug, we know that the support side of that company or that software firm is going to be, they're going to struggle to support us because we out of the box don't automatically already support, they don't automatically support AlmaLinux. So to combat that, we have to always go back to the other OSs that they do support and reproduce the bug and then re-show the bug on those systems itself. And so that's still a pain point. It's a workaround, but I think as we continue to grow the AlmaLinux community, we'll see that actually start to change less and less.
Yeah, I agree with all those. Now, when you asked that question, I reached out to my IT team and my pipeline team. I'm like, guys, what do you think? Just see what answers came out. And I thought the most interesting one was from our head of IT, Epi Tong, who took a bit of a different approach. And she said, in her experience, she built a bunch of VFX studios in Toronto. She's been around for a long time. she says it's almost impossible to hire IT people who know Linux.
True.
Everybody coming out of school isn't taught Linux, and they have to pick it up. So we train and we train and we train, but I feel like going back to the education side and promoting Linux or even just Unix, like would be a huge impact, I think.
Yeah, especially, I know that Ubuntu has done a good job of like finding a way into most schools, but the way that they do that is by being a nice UI, right? That's not teaching anybody any of the stuff that they're going to need in order to run any of the stuff that you're talking about right now, right? They need a very different approach.
Yeah.
You mentioned one of the pain points is vendor support. So I'm gonna feed myself here a little bit. As a person who also wants to see vendor support, but is on the side of the operating system that's like trying to advocate for it, what can I do to support you, or like what can I do to help that? Any of you, but obviously Steven's the one that's on the spot here.
Yeah. But I think we need vendors like Lenovo, HP, otherwise to allow us to install it and not always blame that it's Alma. Because we always need to test again on Red Hat or whatever other flavor just
Right.
to confirm. I even once had to test on Ubuntu to confirm it was not a Red Hat or a PM issue. So, and just because they always want to blame it on something else. They're all like that. We're not gonna, they're all like that. But that is something we all are looking for.
Okay.
And yeah.
I think there is a pretty good way that people can help. And I say this as for a while I was actually running Maya's beta program. And there were a handful of people in that beta program who caught 90% of the bugs that went out in the beta.
Yeah.
So what if there was someone who participated in those beta programs but was focused on AlmaLinux, for example?
Yeah.
I suspect the vendors would respond to, if you make their life easy, like they're going to know that, okay, they have some customers who are using this operating system, they want to make them happy. If you make their life easier, it's probably going to make an impact.
Yeah. I like that idea. Some kind of like beta tester system. What you got?
Market your successes, and I'm not saying that you don't. I was
Sure.
trying to think of the right word, so just bear with me on that.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the reasons why, when we were earlier on trying to finalize where we wanted to go with our OS, I think this time last year, as an example, there was the glib bug that was crashing Houdini.
Yep.
And part of our studios, Imogen is one of our sister studios, and they're the grandfathers of Gaffer, also was getting the same crashes. So we're very tied to that crash and what was going on, and it was with the gmalloc issue itself.
Yep.
But AlmaLinux was the first to respond. They were the first to find. They were the first to implement. And I think it's really important, and I think it's great when we can show that the contributors and those that are finding it are established with AlmaLinux, because it shows that success of like who we have that is at the forefront of this OS.
Yeah. I remember that patch. That was terrifying.
It was like August. It was literally, I think, of this time last year.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was funny because we had to talk about it while we were at SIGGRAPH last year. But I remember as the person that is going to get the phone call when everything breaks, right? When we release something that's terrible, I have been really hesitant to put my yes behind anything that's that deep in an OS, right? glibc is not something you'd patch willy-nilly. and I remember when we decided to do it, I was like, all right, this is make or break.
But the speed and the fast of getting things done, that's much faster than the others, I think is an awesome selling point.
If I recall,
Yeah.
it was like 3
AlmaLinux.
months faster than the others, if I recall well.
Yeah, and honestly, it was your fault. You were
I was
the
yapping.
squeaky wheel. He was loud, and that's another when like we were talking about earlier. That's another way that you can help an open source project is like help us understand the impact, because we didn't know, right? I I don't do any kind of anything remotely related to VFX. I do some iMovie editing once in a while, and it's not good. I promise you that. But we have to hear from you if there's a pain point. We don't know. We can't fix what we don't know about. And Tristan made sure that we knew.
I was just yapping, honestly, but yeah.
You were not. You're like, guys, it's broken, it hurts. And that's what we have to hear, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome. As I ask one of my last questions, I need you guys to think of questions if you have them. We've got another few minutes that we can pick these people's brains, so be thinking about it. We're about to start SIGGRAPH. What is the thing that you're most excited about for this week? Like, or like, what's your goal? Either one.
To not spend all my time in vendor meetings.
I wish you much luck.
Thank you.
I hope this doesn't count as a vendor meeting. I know I asked a very specific question.
Is this recorded?
It is, and it will
I
go
think,
on the
I think
internet.
some of those people are in this room, and I apologize. Sorry.
SIGGRAPH for me is always a good time to just see where the industry is shaping up. And I think we're at a pivotal, crucial stage with the changing of technology and coming out of what our industry has exhibited in the last 3 years. I'm really intrigued and fascinated to see what people have to say with all that, and what's coming through with, machine learning, AI, and how these things are going to affect our business.
I'm honestly just curious to see what's coming up. With everything that's changing, we need to see what's next. Not just stay on what we have. You need to look ahead and look at vendors and say, okay, with what's happening, what do you think, and what are you going to help me with in the future? That's what I'm most expecting of them.
Nice.
I'm really interested, too, in practical examples. Because I feel like lately the hype machine has been cranked up to 1,000, and I'm trying to cut through, And even the practical examples, you find out later, they're like, oh, wait, that wasn't, a real thing. And so that's what I'm struggling with, and I'm curious about.
Yeah, the whole vaporware problem.
Yeah, and it seems that was always been a problem, but it feels extra problematic this year.
Yeah. Yep. I hear ya. Do we have any questions out there? Got at least one. We don't have a microphone runner right now.
We have one left. We have one left. One sec.
Where are they at? Hang on one second. We got one question here.
I'm just gonna jump down.
You have a job now. What's your question?
So Rail 10 and AlmaLinux 10 is here. So with that, that's essentially the end of X11. And so, the visual effects industry relies on Linux desktop quite heavily. And as industry leaders, what are you doing to test for Wayland? And also, specifically for remote desktop protocols, many which are proprietary. Are you reaching out to vendors and kind of putting pressure on them to make that switch?
Nice. That's a good question.
Okay, I'll go. We're not doing much, in all honesty. We're all, and I'm gonna answer all you all. We're all stuck. In all honesty, we're stuck. If we reach out to vendors like, hey, what's coming up? They're looking into it. They're investigating into it. They're testing things, but it's gonna take a while. So when I speak around, and that's what I've been told, don't put me on this, it's gonna take about 2 to 4 years to be able to migrate the whole pipeline, rendering, everything to Wayland. That's what I've been told. Don't put me on fire. So for us, we've been testing like the GUI, the OS. It works great. Even the NVIDIA drivers are actually stable. I'm impressed by that. But the rest we cannot test because it does not work at all. It's not even openable. So, until this change and vendors help us out and push beta product to test out, so we give them feedback, we can't do anything. We'll be stuck until, 2039? So we good.
There's a bit of a trade-off in this. And like I said, we're a bit of a problematic industry. And so that problematic nature kind of inherently likes stability. And that can also be choking in some ways. It can limit innovation. And so we're always fighting a battle to like, oh, let's try and do this new thing without breaking the old thing from working. And at the same time, like as you pointed out, the industry's been through some trials and tribulations. So we're extra fragile, a lot of us. So it makes it even tougher to really push on like, yeah, let's go, try this new, potentially considerably better thing. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, candidly, I think the same thing for both of them. We're not there either, and I think with the same challenges. So, and I think if you ask any of the other studios out there in our industry, they would have a similar answer.
We had a question over here.
Going to flip the question a little bit around. What could hardware vendors be doing to support studios in the development of new hardware, in testing, in OS validation? Is that something that that Alma can help with? Is that something that needs to be driven in the purchasing process from the studio of, cool, vendor X, I will buy $500,000 of render from you if you test and support? Or is this something that needs to be driven from Alma? Like, how do you see that playing out a little bit more? Intel, AMD being chipset vendors and then down into the implementers.
Yeah.
I'll say this, from a pragmatic standpoint, just overall, I think there's a world where I'd like to say that, but in the grand scheme where we are as an industry or even as a business to give that from a manufacturing hardware side, we're such a small percentage. So we do have amazing, hardware providers, and they are amazing for hearing our voices and championing our needs. But even them championing what we need to do our job only goes so far because we are still a small percentage in the world.
I will 100% second that. We are the loudest, most annoying, but also one of the smallest pieces of the pie when you look at the total thing, like if you compare to architecture, engineering, that kind of thing, right? But I will say, one practical thing, ISV and spec are considerable factors for both software vendors and hardware vendors, and those things need a benchmark suite, like a definition of this is the box, these are the specs, this is the software, this is the test case, this is the data that we're putting through that test case. So all those things actually take a lot of effort to put together and to become kind of agreed upon as a standard to test against. But once those are there, they're there, and if anybody's familiar with ISV, they can be there for decades. So that might be an approach.
I mean, but you do make a good point there, because I think that's the one thing about our industry is our industry does have a fairly standard, this is what we are putting on our boxes.
Yeah.
And I think if you talk to any of your hardware providers, that's why our voices are pretty unified in that way.
We're also really, really specific in what we want.
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
So,
No, go for it. Yeah.
okay, so when you mentioned the need for running another operating system for doing some validation and testing, I'm curious to hear what other operating systems that you actually deploy in your companies, and more importantly, why?
I mean, for us,
That was the best look in the
I'm
world.
looking at her like, do I? I don't know.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
No, so I mean, we have to deploy a lot of times systems and operating systems that are specific to our users. So in some cases, we do have Windows, and we do support a small subset of Windows because there are some applications that are only Windows-based. We support 90% of our shop is Linux. But as an example, a lot of people, in our industry, in the software side, will support Rocky. Linux as their OS. And so we have alternative builds of Rocky to also test with when we're doing bug testing and trying to reproduce bugs itself. And that has helped us come a long way when we are finding an issue in AlmaLinux and we want to compare with other OSs when we need to go to our providers to show evidence that there's an issue associated.
Yeah, pretty much the same. You know, basically whatever the vendors are saying, this is a standard that we test the most for, we'll try and have that as a reference.
Yeah.
And then there's also the old OS that worked before, which for us was CentOS 7.9, also tends to become a reference example when we're going back and forth.
How dare you?
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry.
We still have to sometimes. Small.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the same for us. We have Windows for some application that doesn't work. We've been yelling at them, but hey, it is what it is.
The Windows thing is a reality, and it's really frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
Like just the other day, we had this weirdest thing, and then our dev came back and he said, yeah, /215 is a particular escape character, and we had a folder that was 215. Anyways.
You talk about the Linux side of things. It's like when all your systems IT people are mainly Linux people and you have a Windows to support. Yeah.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
good time. It's a good time.
That's the opposite problem.
I gotta say, I am way madder about the CentOS 7.9 than I am the Windows.
I'm sorry.
Don't knock at some studios.
Listen, who else has questions? We got one right there. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to doom a little bit here because I think that there's a missing piece of a lot of the conversation in terms of the software, and that's that the best software isn't the one the studio uses. So if the example that comes to mind for me is that one with Windows, right? No one likes to pay their Photoshop renewal license. So I spent this long period of time finding an alternative, and I found Krita, which is an excellent open source software. It runs on Linux. We implemented it, we got it into the pipeline, we got the hotkeys exactly the same. We checked back 2 weeks later, no one's opened it. Mm-hmm. And so that often comes into the fact that we are constantly leading a horse to water, and the production can just say no. And that's something that it's very frustrating when you're a technical professional because you know this is better, this is free, it does all the things, and you've got 25 Photoshop artists that just say no. And I'm just kind of wondering about your perspective on if you found any way to shift that, or if it's just a reality that is
Stop paying for it.
I kind of guessed it. We were talking, when you guys were talking about it, you were talking about the adoption, everyone kind of took a pause there, and it's almost the elephant in the room where it's like, if production says no, it doesn't matter if it's gold-plated, they say no.
Yeah.
I think the question is, why are they saying no? And, you know, I think probably everybody in this room has the same frustration in that computers are pretty binary things that if something's not working, it's usually us, but sometimes not. But, you know, they're mechanical, whereas humans are not. And unfortunately, humans are actually a big part of the equation that we have in terms of just delivering the product. And when you have someone who has built up a muscle memory over decades in Photoshop, changing that is extremely hard. I don't think it's impossible, though.
Can you wait for my talk next? I'll try to answer that a little bit. So,
Sure. I mean,
Love that.
I'll give you an example of what we did recently. We had a user that used Windows exclusively for Maya, and then she refused to move to Linux. And for whatever reason, she got let go and hired back. When she got hired back, I said to production, there's no way in hell she's going back on that Windows machine. And she had to learn Linux. That was the only time I was able to put my foot down, in all honesty. Like, I tried to implement Krita, name it, all those software that maybe, last year at SIGGRAPH, we learned that Blender is now more taught in school than Maya, because it's cheaper, and Blender has been really, really invested in schools. When I brought that to the production team, you can guess the answer, no. I was even told, in 1,000 years, no. So at one point, just like, what? I cannot do more to my dev/production team. They won't budge, so you just accept defeat.
I have seen success, though. I lied. We it's the people you bring in. So usually we do our modeling in Maya, but we hired a couple of people out of school that, like you said, came out, and they're like, yeah, no, I can use Blender. And we're like, okay, cool, we'll give you Blender. Then the rest of the team saw them producing awesome stuff in Blender, and all of a sudden that mindset starts to change.
No, that's the trick.
Yeah, that's
the trick.
I was going to add to you guys. It's all about
Give me
the
that
internal
contact.
advocate. Like as a community person, I can tell you that is the groundbreaking way to make it in, right? Is you have to get somebody in there that does the same work, that will do it in the way that you can see them succeeding using the tools that you want to use, right? So if you can convince one person to give it a shot, be like, oh, you're going to be my beta tester, and they're excited about that or something, then you can get in. Cool, thank you. Yeah. Who else has questions?
Well, that is it. Huh?
We have answered everyone's questions. You guys are incredible.
Thank you, Benny.
Okay, we gotta. Wait.
It's
wait.
coming
You need
up.
the mic.
It's coming up.
You need the microphone.
Go ahead,
It's
DJ.
this for Laurence on behalf of Amazon Web Services. Are we still meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
we're
just check.
meeting. I gotta respond to your email.
He's been avoiding it, and now you put him on the spot, and it's going to be recorded. Of course he's going to meet with you.
No, this was my bad. I fucked up. Like the time zone in Google Calendar can be very problematic when you're trying
Yeah.
to when you're in Toronto and you're planning for Vancouver.
Yeah, it
So I
is.
screwed it up. So it's my fault.
That's incredible.
Thanks, DJ.
What's worse is you do it out of office. And so all of the vendors and all of the people they're trying to invite you just automatically say no.
Yeah.
And then you get another email, hey, you're not wanting to meet with me? I don't know. That's actually
Correct.
doesn't wanna
That's
meet.
a good trick, actually.
Sorry, it was an out
Awesome.
office email.
Do we have another heckle?
No, it's just, I'll be serious, not him. The Windows, is that Unreal and Adobe? Is that the main two applications?
Well, so interesting thing you bring up Unreal. There's a team there pushing really hard on Linux.
Yep.
And they're awesome, but the plugin ecosystem for Unreal becomes the gating factor.
Okay.
And some of those plugins are pretty amazing and have become quite crucial for production. So that's been a limiting factor there. But I've really optimistically felt that Unreal could be something on Linux. I would say the bigger culprits are Photoshop and ZBrush.
ZBrush, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I know it's been toyed with for a long time, but the idea of trying to somehow persuade Adobe to build for Linux when they build quite clearly for Apple Silicon. So questions have to be asked about, like, how much more effort would it take for them to move, be able to port to Linux? And the official answer has always been there isn't the customer demand for it. The market share isn't there. I've always been a little bit curious about that answer, about whether that's actually the real truthful answer.
I wonder if part of it is also a lot of Windows development is done in a way that is very limited to Windows and hard to port. That's just a guess, though.
Yeah.
I think it may be to the point we made here that the VFX is actually a small piece of the pie for that vendor to go, okay, we're going to support a whole new operating system is a significant cost. Do they think they're going to see the return from the size of the industry that they're looking at? Even when I think we would all just up and buy it right away and have no problem with, I don't know.
Because from a licensing perspective, you're still going to pay the same amount of money to Adobe, for example. You still want to license their software. You just want it to run on a different OS. I've had people suggest to me in the past that we should all have T-shirts that say "Port to Linux" and go and stand at an Adobe, Adobe Max, their annual conference, and buy passes and try and persuade them. But the answer continues to be for many, many years here that there's no customer demand.
Well, it's going to be the right amount of customer demand, right? Like it's going to be a significant investment, is what they're saying. Like it's going to be expensive for them to do. So it's not whether it's no customer demand or not. It's not enough for them to actually put in the investment.
And as customers, you don't have a compelling alternative for the reasons that we've already discussed today. So
Yep.
does a call to arms to the entire industry? Does every single company working in this industry actually have to come together for the first time at a scale that has been unprecedented, never seen before, to petition Adobe?
The next AlmaLinux Day.
I love that energy, but there's a part of me that's scared that maybe there's some studios that are approaching it more from a, hey, if we have this on Linux, it's a competitive advantage. And I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
But there's a tension there. But it's funny, here's a funny story. I'm not gonna name the vendor, but they were chiefly Windows, but you could buy a Linux version of the software with an enterprise agreement. So considerably more expensive than the Windows version of the software. And we were pretty happy to pay this. But what happened was we got into kind of a contract debate, and it took months, and we needed to work, so we invested in our Windows pipeline to support that piece of software. And then when the contract finally came due, we said, you know what? We're wasting a lot of money on this huge enterprise contract when now it all works in Windows, because we had to make it work in Windows.
Yeah.
So at some point it becomes a bottom line discussion as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the price was ridiculous too.
I think that is going to do it for us for time. Give these guys a huge round of applause for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to quick change the stage, and then we'll have our second to last talk of the day.